than you. When I think of his love for me, and how he's looked out for me, I get so filled up like an overflowing cup. I can't say a word, but I can wave my hand. I can't say a word, but I can wave my hand. I get so full. I get so full. I would explain. I explain if I could. God has been just that good. When I think his love for me, and how he's looked out for me, I can't say enough. He's my overflowing cup. I can't say a word, but I can wave my hand. I can't say a word, but I can wave my hand. I get so full. I get so full. I'd explain if I could. God has been just that good. And I just wave it all on.
Good morning. I mean,
Hello.
good morning. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Robert, good afternoon. How you
Good
doing today?
afternoon.
I
I'm
know.
blessed. I'm blessed.
It's been a
I'm
long
blessed.
day, and it's been a lot going on uh, in the news. Um, I know I told you Dave Acosta. Did I tell you that Dave Acosta resigned from CNN?
No, I don't think I heard that one.
Yeah, he resigned because he said that he felt like, well, he didn't name CNN, but he said he wasn't going to give in and let uh, the Trump administration dictate what type of news, and that news needed to remain impartial. So he did. Then George Foreman passed away this week.
Seen that. I've seen that.
And that, and so there's been a lot going on in the news this week. Also, segregation is back in the federal buildings. Did you see that about
I
segregation being back in the federal buildings?
I
We
did see that,
Yeah, we
and
may
I
have to
think
whole show on that.
yeah, I think it's gonna be a snowball effect on that. I think it's gonna roll out kind of like the DEI one after the next. I think it started in federal, but I think it's gonna pan over to the
Private
public.
sector.
hmm The
So
private
we all
sector.
see how that plays out. Um, so black people are really holding steadfast with all of this going on. There's still not a massive protest in the streets. There's some legal stuff going on, some lawsuits here and there. But I mean, some lawsuits, but the focus is still on empowering the community. So that's really a good thing. Tonight, our show is about the international connection. And it's almost a spinoff of last week when we were talking about tariffs. So, um, if you don't mind, I want to take just a moment to talk about how this came about for me. And then I'm welcome you to say the same. Okay, Robin?
Okay, that sounds fine.
Okay, this week I have a really, really close friend. I mean, we're so close that we're almost like family. And we had a conversation this week that's been really sticking with me all week long. And I wanted to make sure that I was being objective, and I wanted to go back and do a lot more research. And we were talking about globalization and United States connection internationally when it comes to capitalism, uh, uh, and free trade and all of that. And one of the comments that my really, really close friend, uh, he used the word that maybe other countries take advantage of the or taking advantage of the United States, and maybe that by putting tariffs on them, it's us standing up for U.S. standing up for itself. But I hope I say this right. At least this is what I walked away with. And during our conversation, I was struggling with it really hard because, and then it dawned on me that my friend is not black. I will not say what race he is, but my friend is not black, and uh, and I don't think it was just that. I really do think it was a social economic divide that we had, and um, I was looking at things, and it was very difficult for me to look at United States as a victim. It was really a struggle, and that's because there's been so much victimizing going in the history of the United States, from the Native American to the Asian to and definitely the black is probably one of the most prolific and extensive um, victims in the history of America, and some of it is still, and a lot of it is still going on today. So it's hard for me to look at a victimizer as a victim. And so I really had to step back and look at the history and think about the history of the United States. I cannot see it as a black woman. That's a stretch for me. And but I welcome my friend's perspective, and I welcome his feedback. It meant a lot to me that he was very honest, and he was looking at it from a different place than I was, which made the conversation robust and worth having. There were other issues. I come from a background of a single mother. I was a single mother. I made it on. I provided for my kids with limited resources and limited income. And my friend, on the other hand, does not have kids and has a pretty robust career. And that's not to say that he doesn't have issues. I think everybody does, but I think those are so significantly different. I went on to explain to him that sell. I just felt like selling United States as a total victim to the world was just a little bit more than I could fathom, and but it did spin off into the international connection. This this topic that we're going to discuss today. So hopefully, I've done a pretty good job of being objective. And Robin and I, thank you for joining us. But I wanted to take out a moment just to say um, the United States is selling this storyline that we are the victim in this, and I don't not believe that for 1 minute, and I still don't believe it. And but me believing it is a perspective. So let's see if we can look at some reasons why. Robin, just to
Uh, like he said, people have different perspectives as where their finances lay and what their responsibilities come from. So that could be a big determination in how you view a discussion that you did have. Um, I don't think that, we'll get more into it, but I don't think that this administration has the overall lower income family finances in prospect versus the higher end financial people incomes. So you were dead on when you said that it makes a big difference in your finances and your responsibilities. So that's all really I have to say about that topic. And like we were discussing it earlier, and I did say sometimes you could be empathetic to a cause or something going on, but that doesn't mean that you know how to walk in that person's footsteps. So that also is a determining factor for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's remind people of some of the things that we talked about last week. So I'm going to show a video that kind of goes back to what we said, and then we're going to tie the international piece to this.
Something's going to happen between now and then that could avoid this.
All eyes on the White House as President Trump vows to impose tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico.
The fear would be that we would see higher prices as a result, not necessarily because vehicles are being produced in Canada, but because a lot of the components, like aluminum, steel, are coming from there.
Car dealerships are not the only ones voicing concerns.
From my suppliers, they are telling me things to get ready. Things could go up, especially disposable stuff, cups and napkins and plates, aluminum, all that. A lot of that stuff, believe it or not, comes from Canada.
The owner of K's Food Supply provides local restaurants with much needed items from disposable goods to frozen foods. And he says if his prices go up, he'll have to pass those costs on to others.
In short term, it's going to be very bad for business owners and consumers. I really don't want to raise the prices on people, but if I have to, what am I going to do? You know, I have to survive too.
In fact, some call it a fight to survive.
I mean, it's not fair.
And many dealerships tell us that they're seeing higher foot traffic as many consumers anticipate higher prices.
We've gotten phone calls. Customers are anxious also about wanting to make sure that they're purchasing or leasing their vehicle before any possible ramifications from the tariffs. There's so much trade that goes on between the United States, Canada, Mexico. It really touches every part of the economy.
In Southfield, Ingrid Kelly, Fox 2 News.
So, one of the first questions was, how did all those parts and all of those things even get overseas? How did that happen? We had Chevrolet, Ford, we had manufacturers and warehouses and all those things here in the United States. How did those things leave the United States and go overseas? I mean, just how did that happen?
Just like they told us during this time that the tariffs we'll have a hit at the beginning and we'll feel some pressure, but in the long run it's going to be beneficial to everybody. That's the same thing they told us when they decided to start making parts here, that okay, yeah, we're going to take a hit, everything's going to be okay, but in the long run we're going to be better off. People lost their jobs. Because they lost their jobs, they lost homes. It was just a trickle down effect. Once again, the administration that did that, like this time, was not and were not on the same page with the people that are on the lower end of the financial scale versus the people that are on the billionaire scale. Someone that's working paycheck to paycheck, they can't afford to lose their job for a week or 2 weeks, or while they find something else, and the person might say, oh, they can get unemployment, but that's only a portion of what they were originally making. And if you're making minimal income, you can't even figure out how to squeeze a dollar, 50 cents out of a dollar. That's just like what they're saying with the tariffs now, that the tariffs increase is going to cause us to probably spend between $900 and $1,200 more per year at the current rate that they have it at now, which is 5 to 10%. So if we're trying to figure out where we're going to get this other $1,200, what do you think they're going to do? What's going to happen when it increases to the 25 and the 30% and even 50% that they're talking about? And they're saying it's gonna we're gonna bite the bullet now, but it's gonna be better in the long run. Better for who? Better for who? Because if you're already low and it's gonna knock you down even lower, how long is it gonna take you to get back up? If you are even able to get back up out of after the knockdown, you know.
So how did we get in this place in the first place? Well, we would have to go back over 40 years. We'd have to go back to the Reagan administration, where the idea was that we could send things. And I don't know, some people may be older here, maybe younger, but I actually remember this when they had all these jobs on the internet and overseas for like data entry and stuff like that. And we would bid, even in the United States. I remember actually doing this, bidding for a job and losing the bid because somebody was doing it for a nickel an hour. Where there was no way I could do it for a nickel an hour. So a dime an hour, 15 cents, ridiculous prices, particularly in China and India. And so these data entry jobs, all these jobs that could be customer service jobs and parts. And as we can see today, almost everything, because back then two two people benefited in a weird way. One was the corporation um, benefit because they were getting free labor, basically, free parts, basically, because they were like so much cheaper to get those parts from overseas than to have our companies, which crushed our unions in the United States. And in the Midwest, this was devastating. Places like Cleveland, Wisconsin, this was completely devastating what happened as far as work. Now, because they got the parts and all of those things cheaper, things in the store, which was to me the big okey doke, things in the stores were not high. I.e., we bring in from Reagan, we go to Clinton. And Clinton expanded that with NAFTA. So it looked like when I went in the store, I was getting everything cheap. But on the underbelly of that, people were losing their jobs and factories were closing. So that was just a temporary fix, a temporary high that, oh, everything is really, a lot cheaper. Well, yeah, it
Mhm.
was because they were barely paying anything for it. And then the corporation were making hand over fist in profits. This comes to the first step of why I don't see United States as a victim. United States corporations and the government, including Reagan and Clinton, put things in place to make sure the corporations got things cheaper so that
Mhm.
they sold it cheaper. That does not make us a victim because it wasn't that they were thinking about the US workers and the U.S. workers losing their jobs and the factories closing down and the GM and the Chevrolet and the Ford companies that have been here for many many years. And I even had people in my family that worked for GM. They retired from GM years ago, and they retired right about the time that this stuff started going on. They just went on and retired. Uh, so that's the first thing. Is the United States really a victim? It was dollars and cents that sent them over there, and uh, it that was the initial incentive. And I think right today, if other countries wasn't saying, well, we want to send our stuff over here, and we want you to buy our things, and we're going to charge you a tariff or whatever to outsource your work to our country. I think if that did not happen, we probably still be capitalizing on basic free labor. The United States has a history of capitalizing on free labor. Now, that's not my opinion. That's a
Mhm.
fact. That's a fact. That is not my opinion.
Mhm.
And I think the worker and the unions got kicked to the side because they wasn't going to work for that amount they wasn't going to work for those pennies on a dollar like that also, and they got crushed and factories closed up, and then there was a domino effect. A lot of the cities ended up with a lot of crime, the people scavenging to make it, drugs. I mean, that had a domino effect when that massive number of people lost jobs in the U.S. because they had trades that they did, and there were few places to actually do their trade.
They have some states, and I think Detroit is one of them. Is like it was one of the highest ranking automotive distribution company, if I'm not wrong, if I'm correct. It was in Detroit. And when that happened, like you said, Detroit was already, I mean, just think about a place that the only real job, the best job you can have is the automotive industry. And you go and you cut their resources down. What do you think it's going to do to the rest of the state? Where else are they going to work? They're going to have to go to lower paying jobs, McDonald's, and now McDonald's and fast food are paying a little bit more than they were back then, but that wasn't enough to maintain a family. And there's no way you can make me believe that taking the jobs, taking the things they manufactured here, taking them overseas in different countries, it was to benefit the people. That was to benefit the business, the corporations. That's the same way I feel about the tariff. It's not to benefit the people, and it's not that we're just going to feel a pinch now. We're going to feel a pinch for a long time, and we're going to be in the same domino effect years to come.
Well, the thing is, it wasn't just you got the free labor, but you also got deregulation. So they didn't have to follow a lot of the regulations that we have in Texas
Right.
in Texas, in the U.S. by sending them overseas. So they
Right.
did. So a lot of that and all of these things cost money. It costs money to be, compliant with regulations. It costs money and to produce things. And now we see things like the plastic, this, and here's the real kicker here. This started like over 40 years ago, and the people that these businesses, some of these people aren't even, they don't know any other way but getting their things from overseas. Some people, some of these businesses, some of these contractors who get their wood from here and their aluminum from here and their this from here, that's all they know. They weren't really out there when the factories and things go on, which brings us to farmers. History sometimes repeats itself, and so now we have the farmers that are in, disarray. The black farmers are real. If everybody's in disarray, then just add some on for the black ones. That's what I say. Everybody's in disarray. Add a little bit on, because it's harder for them to get loans. It's harder for them to get subsidies, and all of this other stuff. And everybody's hurting though because of it. Robin, so that's our little take on it. That's our take on it. I want to show a video about and kind of, I know we're talking about it, but maybe we missed something.
Okay.
The United States has often been portrayed as a victim in the story of globalization and free trade, but the reality is far more nuanced. U.S. policymakers and corporations actively shaped the rules and agreements that opened global markets. Decisions made in Washington and corporate boardrooms set the stage for American companies to expand internationally. Businesses didn't move jobs overseas because they were forced. They chose to, driven by profit, lower production costs, and shareholder value. Consumers benefited too, gaining access to lower-priced goods, keeping inflation in check, and boosting purchasing power. Yet these same choices had profound consequences at home. Communities dependent on manufacturing and industry faced deep economic hardship. Painting America as a victim overlooks the active role played in designing and promoting global free trade agreements. Agreements intended to benefit American companies. Acknowledging the real story, that the United States chose free trade for specific benefits allows for a more honest discussion about how to better balance corporate interests with the well-being of American workers and communities moving forward. Super free trade choices, not victimhood. Know it today truly began taking shape during Ronald Reagan's presidency. Reagan championed free market policies, deregulation, and reducing trade barriers. This laid the groundwork for American companies to look overseas for cheaper labor and production costs. Under President Clinton, globalization accelerated dramatically. NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, became law in 1994, eliminating many trade barriers between the US, Canada, and Mexico. While corporations thrived with new global opportunities, American workers often paid the price. Millions of manufacturing jobs moved overseas, leaving entire communities economically devastated. Workers found themselves displaced, struggling to find new employment, often forced into lower-paying jobs or economic uncertainty. Donald Trump capitalized on this frustration, promising to reverse these trends. He imposed tariffs, arguing it would bring jobs back. However, tariffs also triggered trade wars, increased prices, and didn't substantially reverse job losses. The damage had already been deeply felt by working-class families. Globalization transformed America's economic landscape. While it brought growth and profit for some, it left others, especially workers, facing uncertainty and hardship. Understanding this journey from Reagan through Trump helps us grapple with the critical choices we face moving forward.
So you see, this started this free trade and opening up things to globalization, which I'm not saying is all bad, but the thing is that in some of these countries, the labor was so cheap. Like I said, I tried to do a little freelance data entry work back. I guess it was in the 90s, and when I saw who was winning, they were winning these contracts by agreeing to do the same work that we did for it. I mean, I don't care. I mean, I can say $7 an hour, doesn't matter. But they were doing it for 5 cents, for 10 cents an hour. And that's not an exaggeration. That's really what it was. Not to mention that there were factories and things that people worked out of, child labor and all of those things that did not have the regulations that we had in the United States that we just could not do here. And so it was a win-win for corporations and for politicians that work with contractors and things. I mean, it was a domino effect, and it was, you know, people got votes for stuff like this, and the people that got left out. And I know that we were able to buy things cheaper, but how much can you buy if you're going to lose your job? I mean, that can't last very long. And so that's really what has brought us to where we are today. So in order to understand tariffs, we have to first acknowledge that the United States is not a victim, that it was the chase of the dollar that got us in this place in the first place.
You know, the United States is definitely not a victim. I want to talk about character, in which I feel like this administration we have has no character. And sometimes character is doing right when no one is looking. Integrity and character is doing what's right when no one is looking. Now, not only did they send the jobs, over there, I want to talk about the deporting of the immigrants. Donald Trump was just came to foresight because they brought back all these workers that they had working at the golf course that he owned or managed or whatever he did, and they were working. Then they were saying that they knew that they were illegal immigrants. So the United States is going to do, the administration is going to do what's best for them when necessary. So this tariff was not done to help us; it's to help them. Whatever's going to help them put $1 in their pocket, they're going to do. It's not for us. It's and not like now. Like before, it's going to help, it's going to hurt us now, and it's going to hurt us in the long run for quite some time. So last week, like we talked about preparing ourselves for what's to come, we really have to prepare because we don't know what's coming, but something is definitely coming.
And this is the tariffs are a little bit more complicated to me because the tariffs are really going to make companies have to pay more. Now, the corporations are still going to make money. They're just going to charge it off to us. But there are two talking points that have come up that have nothing to do with tariffs, but they are front and center in the media. One of them is the idea of making Canada the 51st state, and how that came up in a tariff conversation about fentanyl and trying to really push that narrative. And then the other one is Greenland, which is actually connected to Denmark and making that part of the United States. So this is a complicated conversation with layers. Think, I do not believe that it is definitely, I do not believe that it's for the people. Um, there is it's more complicated than that. And personally, I don't believe. I mean, this is my opinion. I don't believe nothing to come out of Trump's mouth. So that's just the way I feel about it. I don't. There's no way. But it's not just him. You know, I mentioned Clinton, Democrat, Reagan, Republican. Democrats, as much as Republicans, have capitalized on NAFTA, on this free trade, on these things, giving contractors the go ahead to use free labor. Some of these places have deplorable conditions, or did have deplorable conditions, child labor and everything. And we were actually sending our stuff and saying, well, we don't know it. We don't know that this deplorable, but we did. But the U.S. did.
Mm.
And it wasn't a focus at that time. What it was how cheap can we get? How cheap can we get this labor? And if you just look at the United States, from the Oriental people that worked a lot on our railroads to Hispanic people that worked in the fields, black people that worked in the fields, and everything else. All of these things are cheap labor. If you look at the immigration right now, because they can't get a job, it's the cheap labor on the farms, in the different places it's the cheap labor. It's the dollar. It's the return on investment that is the motivation. Um, and it's very, and we need to be mindful of that. We need to pay attention to that, and we need to pay attention to what is being passed, and understand the bills and the laws that affect this, because this had, a lot of people say, well, it ain't got nothing to do with me. Well, now you know.
Mm.
It does have something to do with us, and we
You
need
know,
to not put people in office that absolutely do not have our best interests at heart. Robin.
this made me think that the United States is not only the victimizer, they're also a bully. And we know Trump is a true bully. And I think that he didn't feel like he was going to get the pushback that he got when he went to start raising these tariffs. He thought they were just going to sit back and shut up and let him do what he wanted to do. But they came back with some words and fighting. So because he's in this tariff war, we're the ones that's going to unfortunately be the bad beneficiaries of what's going to happen with that. But United States is definitely a bully.
The Mexican Canada trade deal really got rid of all the tariffs except in a couple of areas. I think milk was one that they did not get rid of. Um, but for the most part, I just want everybody to understand that when we hear, oh, they're charging us this tariff and this tariff, the Mexican Canada US trade agreement got rid of those tariffs on both ends. That's why and that's why people are so up in arms, because what was if you go and read the trade agreement, you would find out that a lot of those tariffs were taken care of in that agreement. So it was those tariffs didn't wasn't an issue anymore, except for there were a few. Like I said, I know milk was one, but by and large, uh, the American, I mean the U.S. Mexico trade agreement, Canada trade agreement, really took care of that, and they kind of feel like, and they were supposed to go back in like 6 years or whatever, and reevaluate it. So we just kind of in the middle of it said, no, we don't want to do that. We're gonna charge you tariffs.
Hmm.
Um, there is not a black and white answer here. Maybe it is, but there's not a black and white answer because these things are complicated. But if we at least have a grasp, overview of it, or a grasp of some pieces and parts of it, it really will help us with our voting. We'll be able to really articulate why we're not voting for this, because we do understand tariffs, we do understand globalization, we do have a concept of it,
Mhm.
um, of global, globalization and how it affects us in our day to day lives. And I'm like Robin, I do not believe this is temporary. This is going to be more than temporary.
One of the things, the question I raised this question last week.
Go on,
If
Robin.
they're bringing, they want us to increase our own revenue, our own goods here in the United States. If they want us to increase our goods here, why did they cut off the funding for farmers? Farm produce, vegetables, fruit is one of the things that we get a lot of from other states. Why not help the farmers so that we could produce more of those things here? Why cut off their loans? Why cut off the grant money that was allocated for them to have if we're trying to help United States? That makes no sense to me. That makes no sense. And I don't understand. We have to help us to so that we can get to where they say we're trying to go. But it's like you're biting the hand that feeds you. You want us to improve, but yet you're taking the resources that helps us. That's like what they've been doing to the black community all our life. Every time you want to tell us to go get a job or go help yourself, go do this. Every time we do, you find some kind of way to take it away or destroy it.
My thing is, if we're going to build cars in the United States, where's all the factories?
Hmm.
Where's the backdoor effort to build factories? And within a month or two of this administration, we hit tariffs. We didn't in a month or two start building factories. That I haven't heard anything about any factories, and I'll look and see if I can find some. But where are the factories um, and the parts? Who's building the parts? Where is the
Hmm.
uptick in the parts that's built here? I do not want to give the impression that no parts are being built here, but where's the uptick? Where is that? Where is the uptick on plastics and paper goods? Where's the uptick on the because it seems like either that would happen first before you do the tariffs, or they be happening together.
Hmm.
What we're hearing is bringing back segregation, DEI, CRT, critical race theory, removing Black Mile, uh, Black Lives Matter out the middle of the street. We are hearing um, anybody that does DEI, they're going to lose their job, firing people at IRS, all of firing veterans. But we're not hearing anything about any any big push to be a plastic increase. Um, Jobs in the area of paper, plastics, aluminum, steel, um, manufacture car parts. housing parts, stuff. There's no factories and nothing that we're seeing. As a matter of fact,
Mhm.
most of the budget goes to the military, and not those things, not domestic. It is very little going to domestic, including education, uh, housing, anything, healthcare. There's very little in the budget when you look at it. I mean, you'll hear big numbers, but if you look at it comparatively, uh, that's not happening. What we're not seeing in the news, what we're not seeing anywhere, is a concerted effort to build those jobs, put those jobs back here, so that when these tariffs hit and we don't have to be forced to go overseas, we can actually do it in the United States. I challenge anyone to show me the uptick in the government. And what I look at a lot of the Congress and a lot of the Senate hearings, and we're not seeing that as part of the discussion. The discussions usually are around some kind of argument about if somebody discriminates, and what does Elon Musk do? Um, what is his job? I mean, that's all the discussion. The discussion is not okay. In the Midwest, we need to start building factories. We're going to start breaking ground on that, and we're going to allocate X amount of money to get that done. That is not happening. And I think what people do is we have to critically think. You cannot just sit there and look at the news and buy people's talking points. Where are those things? Where is that build up of the infrastructure here to sustain us long term? And that's why Robin and I do not believe that this is short term, nor that it has us in mind. Robin?
They I just keep thinking about they executed a plan without having a real plan, a diagram in line. Like they dismantled the Board of Education for the teachers to teach our children. Who knows if we didn't have the next farmer, where the future home of America's farmer, or the next engineer in one of those classes, that they've dismantled the Board of Education. They've taken out the books in the school system to teach our children different things other than this, whether the blue bonnet curriculum, which misses out, that takes out so much of the things that we should be learning as a minority student as well. It just, how do you help a society if you're taking away the things that you need to build a foundation? How do you explain that?
Well, one of the things I think is a silver lining. I don't want to make that glass be half empty. So if I was going to make the glass half full, is self reliance. Um, Self reliance. We, for hundreds of years, or for 100 years, I know, Black History Month has only been 1 month. I've been seeing a lot of 365. If people are not, if our kids, black and white, Hispanic and above, if they are not learning history and learning certain things, and things are being modified to make them think a certain way, then I think that it is a good idea that it comes back in our hands. I to some degree, I think that that's something I'm seeing a lot more. I'm seeing on TikTok, on Instagram, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and all the others. I'm seeing a lot of history of different people of color being shared on there. And this is where people are. This is where young people are. And a lot of history is being taught now through social media, because when you try to erase something, when you try to erase a people, all they do is stand up and rise to the occasion. So now we don't have to be faked anymore. We understand. There's a lot of things that's been going on, and I think the silver lining is that we people are starting to learn to go back to self-reliance, taking care of. And one of the things the black community really was good at, and then I don't know, I don't want to say nothing, uh, but taking care of the community and supporting the community is front and center right now. That is really good and educating the community like we're doing on Hidden Voices, trying our best to educate ourselves as well as other people in the community. And it's an uphill climb.
Hmm.
It is. It's an uphill climb to get people to understand that this is part of their lives every day. And it's really hard when you're struggling or you're trying to do something else or you're just unenlightened. I mean, I hate to use that word because snobby people use that word, but you're not exposed to some things.
Hmm.
So this here is just a few things that we wanted to share with you. The real shift started to happen in the 1980s. Like I said, it was during the Reagan era, and they began to send all these jobs overseas because just to cut costs. It wasn't driven by tariffs, uh, but by profit and deregulation and cheaper labor abroad. That was the motivation. During the Reagan era, there was policies in the government that reduced regulations and weakened labor unions. So these things were happening simultaneously. India, China, and Mexico became outsourcing. I talked about India with the data entry stuff, but it wasn't just that. I mean, it was customer service, it was computer
Hmm.
pieces, parts, all kinds of stuff was being uh, outsourced to China, and we were getting it for pennies on a dollar.
Right.
And then Clinton came about with NAFTA in 1994. So after Reagan, then Clinton came in. Um, no, was it after? I don't. Was one of the Bush in between that? I think it was Reagan, then Bush, then Clinton.
Hmm.
And NAFTA eliminated most of the tariffs between the U.S. and Canada and Mexico. So they eliminated these tariffs and encouraged even more job movement south of the border. So Clinton actually was part of the problem. He increased sending jobs south of the border, which would be Mexico and Canada. Well, Canada would be north, but definitely Mexico. U.S. companies benefited, but many Americans lost their jobs. So, politics is politics. Now, under Trump, I said something about one of those tariffs being as high as 270%. That was Canada. But I mean, that was to protect their milk. I don't know how that plays in there. I don't. The U.S. has low tariffs on most imports from partners. So Mexico, Canada, and U.S. agreement got rid of those tariffs. China's tariffs, uh, before Trump, China had tariffs on pork, soybean, and fruit. Remember, this is the same place they used to go and get the cheap stuff from. And so now they put tariffs on us, and I guess we still want to get the cheap stuff. The European Union, 25% tariff on U.S. agriculture. Mexico lower but some protective of some of local goods. So these this has happened. Now, I'm not talking about Trump 2024. I'm talking Trump 2018. So a lot of this stuff happened during the first um, thing. Now, think about 2018. So the U.S. imposed new tariffs on steel, aluminum, and Chinese goods. Do anybody think that the prices have went down since then? I don't think so. Canada, Mexico, and China retaliated with their own tariffs. This has been going on since 2018. Trade wars began, hitting U.S. farmers and manufacturers hard. So this is not a 2024 thing. This is a 2018 thing that was extended into 2024. So let's talk about Obama. Obama also, he came, and if I don't know if y'all remember that, Obama came up with TPP and free trade. All of these things all of these things are designed for corporations to get free trade or to get cheap labor or cheap overhead costs. Trump, he did the aggressive tariff calling uh, American first, America first. He renegotiated. Now, this is not a bad thing that he did. He renegotiated NAFTA and came up with the U.S. Mexico Canada agreement. But now he's backtracking on that, and that's one of the problems. Biden maintained Trump's tariffs, but the difference in Biden was Biden shifted focus to domestic investments and allies. So even though he kept Trump's tariffs that he had in place from 2018, he also turned the focus back on building uh, and rebuilding those businesses that we lost.
You know, I was gonna say, you made that statement about, well, Clinton, when he raised it, I think the difference in what Clinton did and what Trump did, Clinton wasn't doing it for the corporation. Unfortunately, he was just sidetracked because Monica Lewinsky had his brain tied up. So I
Girl,
think he
boo, girl, boo. He did it for the, part of it. We have to face that it's not always a Republican and Democrat thing. You know what I mean? Because Democrats have capitalized as much as Republicans have capitalized. It's just they also invest and they also fight for things that's domestic. But this particular thing with NAFTA that Clinton did really hurt the workers in a very serious way.
right.
And what he did was he took what Reagan did and made it and expanded it.
Mm.
Not a Trump fan, but the renegotiation of that that they came up with the no tariff, that really lowered or to no in some areas no tariff. The United States Mexico um, Canada trade agreement uh, wasn't all bad, and now it's just poof up in smoke. So I don't know.
Mm.
So, did anybody take advantage of the U.S.? U.S. companies chose profit over protection. They did not protect us, they chose profit, as historically they do. Trade partners played by the rules we help write. So, we're upset with countries that we help write these rules. We help put this in place. And so, they did not break any rules. They didn't break rules. When I say any, I mean overall. Please don't do an absolute when we say things. Overall, they did not break the rules. We helped write the rules, and they played by those rules. Um, so these are some these are some things that the Mexico Canada agreement, U.S. agreement included. It replaced NAFTA in 2020 under Trump. It introduced stronger labor and environmental standards. It increased U.S. access to Canada's dairy market. It required more auto productions in North America to qualify for tariff-free status. And it included digital trade rules, and that's mostly with the internet, and stronger intellectual property uh, protections. And is seen as an update to NAFTA with bipartisan support in the U.S. So both parties really supported this.
Mm.
And now that's all gone. That's all gone because we did not honor that agreement, or we are not. We are in the process of not honoring that agreement.
That we put in effect now. We don't want to honor it.
Yep. One of our viewers is saying it's all about the money. Absolutely. When we get that, and we know that, but we know what we're talking about when it's all about the money and making deals is what she said, which she is absolutely correct. It's about making deals at the cost and risk to the worker, and we have felt that. So I don't think that we should go into this tariff thing blinded, uh, like like we were back when all the jobs were being sent overseas. And people were sounding alarms, but I don't know if we had the tools at that time to fight in the way that we need to.
Hmm. Hmm.
Robin?
I'm just going to reiterate on what we said. We have to get ourselves in order and make our own plan for your family. You know what's best for you and your finances and your family. You have to get in order and do that. And I also think what you said, Tammy. They took the education piece of it and they wanted to make our children learn what they want them to learn. And you're right. Maybe it is a good thing. That way we can start back giving our children what they need to learn and what we want them to know and be successful. And it just goes back to the point to where they always do things for what they do things for evil, but in the end it always turns out for our good. They did things that were not beneficial for us, but at the end of the day it will be beneficial if we take the reins and do what we're supposed to do with our family and with our children. Like we have been saying from the very beginning, educate your children at home. Put your library in your home. Do what you need to do to help your kids get to the mindset that they need to be in so that they will be successful when they get of age.
At least they have an option to. Everybody's not going to be successful. As long as there's going to be people, it's always going to be people that's poor. It's going to be people that's not. It's going to be people that's motivated. It's going to be people that's not. The problem with the United States, or the problem with the system that we're in, is choices are being made where the options are not there. If I want to take the option to not be successful or to be whatever, but I do have the option to do better. And some of those options are being taken. And I think that it's a scapegoat to say that, well, you have a choice, because if loans are not available to you, if grants are not available to you, if now you can't, school funding is being, colleges are being defunded because they are teaching certain subjects. If no one no longer, uh, I mean, look, if segregation is back, I mean, that should tell you all that you need to know about opportunity and chance. Uh, it's like a DEI cake with segregation icing. Uh,
Mhm.
that's, I mean, bootstraps can get thrown out the window at this point. But because a lot of communities, and particularly communities of color, a lot of these communities have thrived in the middle of this. Not, you know, I love our community, but we're not the only ones that have thrived, and we are not the only ones that disagree with this. Although we're not going out in the streets and protest with no one, we're not the only ones agree, and we cannot fix this community with being 12% of the whole population. But we're not going to beg others for help. I think that we have to relearn. We have to go back to being the resilient community that we are, knowing that there are people in the community, white as well as any other nationality, that totally disagrees with all of this, and uh, should be fighting to change some of this, and fighting within their own community, as well as they can go in the streets and fight there, and fight within their own community and within the government to make change. It doesn't have to be a one size fit all way of fixing things. In the meantime, I do believe that the black community really needs to, that empowering ourselves and educating ourselves is very important. Hey
Mhm.
Rob,
Yeah,
can I talk about my book?
go ahead.
Okay. So I have 3 books out. This is Rub Sage. This is Fire Unfinished, and Trinity's River. Now, one common thing is between all of these books is, one, I did it, I finished, I was so excited. But they all have very strong black women as um, the forefront of these books. I have black women warriors, black women attorneys, um, and a lot of these, and a lot of my books really deal with strength, inner strength, spiritual strength, as well as um, showing the beauty in us and redemption in some aspects. Particularly, Rub Sage is really heavy on redemption and making amends. And then Trinity's River is a powerful civil rights attorney. In and then in Fire Unfinished is a literally a black woman that leads um, battle, and she is number one. Most of our books have a lot of our books and a lot of our movies have strong black women, but they're typically they are supporting men. They are not number one. They're usually number one and a half or number two. In the books that I create, I make them number one, unquestionable. Um, so, with that said, starting next week, I'm going to be hosting narrations every week of a chapter out of the books until we finish them. And we will have, and it really gives you an opportunity to delve into the complexity of the characters, to find commonality with the characters, to be taken on a journey. I tell you, I have a twisted mind. You just don't know. I have a very twisted mind, and I love to take people on twists and turns. Um, I invite you to join me on there. We'll do a narration of the book, read a chapter audio. It will be the audio version, but after that, I will be available to talk about how that chapter came about and what um, inspired each individual chapter. I think it's a good way to introduce our community, and I just think we don't see enough of the woman being number one. I mean,
Mhm.
when I say number one, I mean with a number sign and um, and showing black women have been so instrumental and so strong in handling all of the different things that we've had to endure in since coming to this country, from Harriet Tubman on, Fannie Mae Hamer on, and but in a lot of those, in a lot of the stories, and even the fictional stories, the woman, although very strong, very crucial, very important, we don't see stories of women being warriors, and we don't see. And I'm not saying they never come around. We just don't see a lot of stories of women being warriors and leaders, and the lead attorney, maybe the something else. But so I invite you, and I will be sending out an invite next week to start that, and it'll be one chapter a week. Robin,
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to hearing that. Thank you, everyone, again for joining us another week. We appreciate you taking your time out your schedule to join us. We hope you appreciate and enjoyed the topic tonight. If you feel free to send us questions, if you still have questions, we'll definitely answer those. We don't know. We don't proclaim to know the answers to everything, but we can tell you that hold on to your hats and your bootstraps because we're in for a ride. I hope this time next year we're all in a better place. And thank you again, and have a good evening.
goodbye, everyone. Thank you. Pay
Night.
attention. Keep your eyes open.
Good night.
With my head down, with my head down. been just that good.